So, today we're going to talk about what an ion is. So there's a warm-up question, and I have a little diagram for you. An ion is an atom that gained or lost electrons. So in here, which of the following is an ion? The left or the right atom, and what's the total charge? So, we need to see if they have different numbers of electrons as they do protons. In the one on the left, there are 4 electrons and 4 protons. So those are equal, which means it's stable, so it's not an ion. Here we have 2 electrons and 4 protons on the right, which means it's not stable, and it is an ion. So the one on the right is an ion. Now it has 4 positive charges and 2 negative charges. So what do you think the total charge of the ion would be? To figure that out, you just do the protons minus the electrons. So 4 minus 2 is a 2. So this ion has a +2 charge. There are a couple of rules for ions that we need to know. The first one, and I'm sure you've heard this phrase before, is that opposite charges attract. The second one, and we already went over this, is that the charge is equal to the number of protons minus the number of electrons. So if you have 4 protons and 4 electrons, you will have a neutral atom. There will be no charge. If you have 3 electrons, you'll have a +1 charge, and in the one we saw, if you only have 2 electrons, you'll have a +2 charge. And then the next rule that you need to know is about valence electrons. Valence electrons are what ions are made from. They're the most important thing. They determine how any element behaves. So in group 1, if you have 1 valence electron, you're going to lose 1 electron. If you're in group 2 and you have 2 valence electrons, you're going to lose 2 electrons. But then for the nonmetals, something different happens. In group 3, even though it's nonmetals, but because there are less electrons to lose than there would be to gain, they'll lose electrons. 4 and 5 have your metalloids in them, so they don't behave according to the rule. 6 and 7, though, they'll gain electrons. So if our goal is to get to 8 electrons, do you think it's easier to gain 2 electrons to make 8, or lose 6 to lose that whole outer shell? It's going to be a lot easier just to gain 2 electrons. And then our noble gases in group 8, they already have 8 electrons. They have a full octet, which is what that's called. If you don't have that written down, you should. And so they don't need to gain electrons at all. So the process of when an atom gains or loses an electron to become an ion is called ionization. That's the becoming of an ion. So right here, this one is neutral. We have 4 red circles, we have 4 protons, and we have 4 blue electrons. So the charge overall is 0. The next thing we're going to do is lose an electron. And now we have an uneven ion. We have 4 protons and 3 electrons and a +1 charge. The only reason that we become an ion, though, is to get a full shell, whether that's to lose our outside shell or gain an outside shell. This one now has an outside shell with only 1 electron, so it's going to lose it again, lose the shell overall, and have a +2 charge, so that shell just goes away. So here we have 8 protons and 8 electrons and 0 charge. This is a noble gas if it has 8 electrons on the outside. Or actually, no, it's not a noble gas because it doesn't have full shell. This is something that's in the oxygen group, so it has 6 electrons on the outside. It wants to gain 2 electrons to get to that 8. So it's going to gain 1. And if it gained an electron, it's gaining a negative, so it's going to have a -1 charge. It has extra negatives. And then it's going to gain another electron. So this ion, to get its full shell, will actually have a -2 charge. And that is based on something called electronegativity. So that is how greedy something is for electrons. If it is very electronegative, it steals electrons. It takes them away. It wants to gain them. It wants more negative. If it has weak electronegativity, it's not greedy, it gives them away. That'll be your metals. You can divide your periodic table up like that.